Okay, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to our new web conversation in the Forum for Disciple Making. Thank you all so much for joining. We're just gonna take a few more minutes to let everyone join. And just wanted to let you know that we are really happy to see you all. Thank you so much for taking the time for joining. We welcome those who have been participating before. Also, very warm welcome to those who are joining for the first time. This today is our fourth web conversation. So we are just excited about how this is now turning into a series of intentional connections between people all over the world. So, okay. Well, again, thank you so much. Today we're going to continue our conversation about foundations of disciple making. Looking back, as those of you who participated may remember, we've asked questions like, why is it important? What is authentic disciple making? How does it look like in different aspects of life? And today we'll continue, especially from an angle of asking ourselves, if disciple making is so important, why then it's often neglected? And I think that's, it is obvious that often we miss that. We miss that in our personal lives, we miss that in our churches, and so on. So today we're going to especially explore why is it neglected and what does a culture that is intentionally embracing disciple making look like. Before we continue with the webinar, I want to remind us that we are now spending quite a bit of time in these web conversations in small groups. So today we're also going to break into 4 small groups, similarly to the previous time, and each group is designated looking into a specific area of focus, such as church, family, organization, or youth, not necessarily in that order. So please, if you can go now to your name in Zoom and put the number of the small group that you want to be part of along by your name in Zoom. This way, we'll know what breakout group to put you in when we'll do that. So again, please go to your name in Zoom. I think there is I don't know, well, if you have this little instruction how to do that, and then just put the number of the group that you would like to be in by your name. So again, the groups are: number 1 is organizational. We are looking at movement, organization, what does it look like in that context. Then church, looking at both local church and church in general. Then number 3 is youth, and then number 4 is family. So thank you very much, those who already did it. If you haven't done it yet, please, again, just like it's now shown on the screen, go to your name on Zoom and add number to your name to indicate what group you want to be a part of. And as I said, today we're going to spend quite a significant time in So again, thank you so much. I'm really excited that we'll do something unusual today, what we haven't done before. Today we have a video story that we would like to share with you. Story comes from Uganda, from Watoto Church. I've been there. I'm Pastor Julius and we serve in different ways together. So I'm really excited that they have a chance today to share with all of us how does holistic disciple making look like in their context, and the kind of impact that this shift in thinking and practice had in their church, both in church in general, in individual lives. So if you're ready, please pay attention to your screens, and we're going to watch an exciting and encouraging story from Kampala, Uganda.
If the church went away, would anybody notice? This was the question years back when our church first heard about the draining of DNA from Darrell Miller and Bob Murphy. We realized anew how God's intention and redemptive plan is not just to save souls, but to bring healing to all areas of life and to society. Furthermore, we saw that our role as a church is to reveal and bring God's intentions to these areas in our families, our schools, our places of work, our businesses, our government, even to the policemen who keep law and order. This is what it means to be the salt and the light and to love others in Jesus' name. It is to bring God's truth, but also His goodness and healing to everyone at all levels of society and in every sphere.
As a leadership, we took the commandment of loving your neighbor practically. We taught this to the church, and the church took it upon themselves. In small groups, the church went and practiced this in the communities. Loving your neighbor has drawn many people to the Lord, because loving the prostitute, loving the driver, loving everyone has brought them to Christ. We now know loving your neighbor attracts people to fall in love with Jesus. This is bringing transformation to the community, and now we see bringing transformation to the nations.
We are 32 ladies, and many of us have been transformed. Before we met, we had the bitterness in us and forgiveness, but God has changed us. There's this one lady in particular, that's Sylvia.
I used to be a drunkard that was hated by my family and daughter. I used to have a home, but I ended up homeless and living in a pigsty. I thank God for leading me to Sister Justine and Sister Resty. When I prayed with them, I heard what God says in the Bible.
We loved her, we always gave her a big hug, even if she was drunk. We showed her the love of Christ. So we invited her to the church.
I went there and attended the service. I told God, I have come to pray, but I want you to deliver me from alcoholism because my family hates me. I asked God to bring back my child to live with me again, even though she hates me. God heard my prayers and delivered me from alcoholism. I have never taken alcohol ever since. I asked God for a husband, and He gave me one.
The love of God of Christ changing her from drunk to good. And now, that is where I fall in love with her.
We went to church and got married. The community did for us a very beautiful wedding.
The church organized everything. They gave Sylvia a dress, shoes, and the pastor gave a suit to the husband. On that very day in church, after Sylvia saying I do to the husband, the daughter gave her life to Christ, and the mom reconciled with Sylvia.
I couldn't believe it, but when I reached the church where the wedding was, I witnessed God's miracle. I found my dad and mom looking lovely. I really thank God that on the very day of the wedding, I was transformed. I wasn't a born-again believer, but on that day, I confessed Christ as my Savior and got saved.
4 family members gave their lives to Christ. So after that, Sylvia thought of something. What can I give to Christ after doing all that to me? She opened her house. She invited ladies, the same ladies that are in the same condition that she was in.
I really thank God that ever since I was transformed, I started working and opening my home for fellowship with other ladies every Wednesday.
They started coming in her home, meeting, praying, talking, showing love to each other. The ones that had bitterness, they started to believe in themselves, and now they started learning how to do the skills, the tailoring, soap, and the doormats to earn a living.
I thank God and thank Him for leading me to meet these ladies.
She loves Christ with all her heart, and she loves people. She's giving the love that she met in our group to other people out there.
A member of our church called Sidonia one day became very, very sick.
The pain was too much. I called my son and I sent him to one of our cell members to go and call him. When he came, he found me in the pain, serious pain. And he asked me, can you walk? Then I told him no. He went and called some of my neighbors. They come and carry me and took me to the hospital where a Muslim man is working.
When they brought Sidonia to me, to the clinic, she was very sick and very ill. I gave her treatment, and in the midst of the treatment, I asked the person who brought her whether it's the one who's going to pay for the bill. Told me yes. I asked, are you the husband? He told me no. And I asked, are you the brother? He told me no. Are you her family member? He told me no. And I asked him, why are you going to pay for the bill? He told me, it's because we got the same church and the same cell.
He was so touched and asked him, so how can a person who they are not relative take care of somebody and pay the bill? And after that, the love when they are showing to me, it touched his heart.
I was eager to know what's taking place in church, because for me, I'm a Muslim. I was a Muslim by that time. When I reached at the church, the love they had, their welcoming, it made me to change, and I confessed that Jesus is my Lord and my Savior.
He has even changed his name. He's now called Derek, and he loves Christ so much.
As a local church, we love Jesus passionately, so we train our people. We equip them, we envision them to go into their neighborhoods, find the needs there, and begin to meet those needs in very practical ways. This has given us so much access to communities and influence. We are celebrated not just by the big government people, but by the community, because we were right there aiming at the pain, solving community problems together with the community. I believe if churches only did this, we would have much more influence in our cities, in our countries, like never before.
These are not just stories. We have taught this and practiced, and has become a way of life for us as a church. I believe what we have done in our own Jerusalem, you can do too in your Jerusalem.
Welcome back. I don't know about you, but it's not the first time I'm watching these stories, but every time I listen to them, I'm very encouraged and very inspired. And I know that this is happening in many places all over the world. I hope and almost certain that that's what many of us are experiencing in our daily lives. So I just want to thank to Bob Moffitt, one of the members of our Decade of Disciple Making team, for the work on this video, and also Watoto Church for intentionally modeling and seeking to grow this culture of holistic disciple making in so many different ways and manifestations. So as we are thinking why it's neglected, there are many reasons why disciple making can be neglected. We won't go into the details today, but I just want to point to a couple of things for us to think about, and then we'll have a chance to discuss it in our small groups. One of the primary reasons why disciple making is often neglected or is not getting the kind of attention that it requires and needs is our, in a way, one-sided or limited understanding of what is actually the church's mission, or how do we, like, what is the most important thing. And especially in evangelical circles, we often talk about we need to get people to know Christ. We need to make sure that people are getting saved, as many of them as possible. And while this is great, I think that there is no person on this call that would not agree that we want to see more and more people getting saved. This is actually just part of the story. This is part of the mission. When we go back to what Jesus was actually talking about, we'll see that, interesting enough, while we all know that getting saved is important, what he was framing it in a bit of a different way. And I want to suggest for us to take 3 things that Jesus said into consideration today and see if we can bring them together in a holistic understanding of the church's mission and what is really important. And interesting enough, I borrowed this from a book that I recently read, The Idea. And every word that I'm going to use starts with a C. So this is like 3 great C's. And I think many of us are familiar with at least some of them. So first great C is great commandment. You all know that Jesus said that we need to love God and love your neighbor. And that's a very integral part of the mission. I think that's what was demonstrated in this video so well, that disciple making, discipleship, following Christ is at its core about loving God with all your heart and then loving neighbor as yourself. Then the second great C is Great Commission, of course. And we often start Great Commission as go and make disciple, emphasizing the word go. But when we look in the original text, we'll actually see that the word go means more as we are going. Basically, whatever it is that you're doing, whenever you are, make disciples. So the actual commission there is make disciples. In other words, help people to follow Christ. Of course, following him myself. So this is the second great C. And then the third great C is called Great Collaboration. It's probably new for many of us. And we find it in John 17 when Jesus is praying for his disciples and says that, prays to his Father and says, I pray for, in my own words, for them to be as one, to be one, as we are one. So this is great collaboration. In a way, what it means that as we are loving God and loving people, as we are helping others to follow Christ, we need to do it in unity with others. We need to do it with kingdom thinking. So this kind of holistic approach or wholeness approach, I think that's what you really need. And that's a reason why disciple making is actually often neglected, because we overemphasize one part, and usually it's evangelism. Usually it's all about saving the souls. And again, I don't want to diminish importance of people coming to know Christ, but more often than not, the way to do it is actually by loving them, by helping them to become a disciple and then follow Christ in all areas of their lives. So there are many other reasons, of course. We can also look at lack of models. We can look at sometimes lack of resources, lack of positive examples. But we think that, or I think at the heart of this is understanding of the core mission that Jesus has given to us as the church. And I want to repeat it again. I think the core mission is encapsulated by those three great C's that Jesus gave us and prayed for us. Great commandment, love God and love other people. Great commission, make disciples, help everyone to follow Christ. And great collaboration, be as one. And no matter where we are, no matter even sometimes small various differences, we can be in unity pursuing this kingdom goal of following Christ both in our life and also helping others to follow Christ. So we're going to dig deeper into some of those things later in our small groups. And right now, I just want to pass it on to Dave, who will share a little bit more about the various resources that we've got and also how we are actually breaking out in small groups. Thank you very much. And Dave, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ruslan. We will be moving after my sharing about this tool into our small groups. So if you haven't yet put your number of your group by your name, that would be helpful. Group 1 is organizational leaders, those that are like denominational leaders, evangelical alliance leaders, mission ministry leaders. Group number 2 is principally pastors and those who really want to understand how does the whole church move into disciple making. Group number 3 is youth and those who want to see a movement of disciple making among youth. And 4 is family disciple making, parents, couples, children, and how you move that forward. Thanks, Val. We're going to look at a tool now that has to do with a disciple-making culture. Someone once said that the last thing that fish would ever discover is water. One of the last things most churches would ever discover is that they don't have a disciple-making culture. When we are completely surrounded by something, we just assume that's the way life is, and we don't actually catch how it could be different. So Val, are you going to put on the screen that tool? I'm sorry, we didn't connect as to whether I was putting it on the screen or she was putting it on the screen.
I have the link to add to send to them, but I don't have it on the to put it on the screen.
All right, let me see if I can push it up on the screen. Forgive me, folks, I was not as 100% prepared as I should have been on this point, but we'll get there real quickly. Okay, profile of a non-disciple-making church and a disciple-making church. Describing a non-disciple-making church helps us see the size of our crisis in terms of the lack of a disciple-making culture. We actually have two tools on the site, this one that I'm showing you and another one by Edmund Chan, which compares 3 different kinds of churches: a church that has disciple making as a concept, secondly, a church that has disciple making as an emphasis, and thirdly, a church that has disciple making as central. And so he, on 8 different criteria, shows those differences. You can see that in the link that Val is posting on the chat. So looking at these, the exercise suggests underline the phrase on each column that best describes your church. So once you've downloaded this, you might want to do that exercise because it will really help you picture where do you fall. Bible study. Without real application, discussing truths and insights. I've been in small groups for decades without real application, where from week to week, nobody changed, nobody was trying to change, but we were so excited about Romans and then excited about 1 Corinthians and then excited, and so it goes. In contrast with that, setting aside significant time for application. In my disciple-making micro group, after we spend 10 minutes reconnecting, we spend the next 10 minutes talking about our applications from last week. We've all written them down, but we come back to them because in most studies, all of my life, we've never done that coming back to the previous applications. And in that case, when we don't, we are actually a non-disciple making church. Looking at cells or small groups, most churches without subgroups, if they have cells or small groups, but without breaking into subgroups, don't actually have individualized care and depth. In a group of 10, 12, or 15, people are not going to open up very much, and they're not going to share deeply personal needs. In contrast, a disciple-making church uses subgroups in their cells. The leader disciples 2 or 3 subgroup leaders, and they disciple 2 or 3 members of their subgroups. And so everyone has someone who's helping them grow intentionally. Leadership formation. I won't be going through everything on this page, but I'm going to go through the first 5 or 6. Most churches, a non-disciple making church, has no substantive leadership formation. All churches have leaders, but many churches don't really have substantive leadership formation. In contrast, a disciple making church with subgroups, assistant leaders are discipled by the leader. A great key to raising up leadership is in every sphere have 1 or more assistant leaders. That will informally and non-formally be leadership training in addition to any formal leadership training. Speaking of training, number 4, non-disciple making churches focus on teaching, which is focus on content without training. In fact, many of those churches don't even realize there is a difference between teaching and training. The second or last column talks about that difference. A vision, practice, and clear commitment to training, and we use the acronym DICES, the first letter spelled out for 5 different principles. Demonstration. If we don't demonstrate what we want people to do, we will never train them. We will only talk at them, we'll only teach. Instruction of DICES is the teaching element. That's obviously crucial, biblical base and so forth. Confirm in action. Most time we have no idea what people do. We may think we've trained them and we bless them and they go on their way. And then if we ever were to see them doing what they're doing, we would be horrified or surprised because it is not at all what we thought we were training them in. Evaluation, where the group itself, after they see people practice this, evaluate what did they do well, what can they improve, and finally supervise. Someone who visits this person maybe quarterly or in some frequency just to see, are they doing well, how are they doing, can they keep growing? And I'll finish then with this 5th one. I'll do the 5th and the 6th. Identity of disciple or apprentice. In a non-disciple making church, that's limited to new converts, sometimes extended to youth. In a disciple making church, every pastor and leader is a disciple, is an apprentice, has a mentor or disciple maker in their life. As with the great commandment that Ruslan just highlighted for us, the vertical with God is joined with the horizontal, the human dimension, having a divine mentor-discipler and a human mentor-discipler. Lastly, for now, there are about 6 more items, but for now, discipler identity. those who work with new converts. They're the ones who understand themselves to be disciplers in a non-disciple making church. In a disciple making church, every pastor and leader is a discipler multiplying. That is where things just, it's a game changer, where everyone sees themselves as multipliers. And so it goes. I encourage you to look at this tool later and be able to identify better, how is your church doing? It may be doing well on some points, it may be doing poorly on other points. So with that, Ruslan, are we moving into our breakout rooms?
Yes, now is the time for us to move to the breakouts. So I see that there are still people that have not indicated what groups you would like to go in. So let me just go quickly through the list of the groups, and please let us know which one you're joining, so that as she will be now inviting all of us to different rooms, she can do that. So again, number 1 is organizational or movements. Number 2 is church. Number 3 is youth. And number 4 is family. So I'm looking forward to see how this time will go. So now we're gonna break into groups, and then in 15 or 20 minutes, we're gonna come back again to this room, and we'll share how did everything go. So have a great time in the groups, and I'll see you in a few minutes. It's great to see that almost everyone is back. So thank you so much for sticking around, for participating in your small groups. I believe and hope that you had lively and constructive discussions, that it was helpful. So now we are going to hear how the time today went in those breakouts, and we'll start with Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. Our breakout room had 11 people. We were delightfully representative of the whole world, several from Asia, several from Africa, several from Latin America, Caribbean, stretched across Canada, Middle East. It was a delightful group. We spent our time actually mostly getting to know each other, getting connected, and probably the number one takeaway is that we have significant things in common. We have significant things that we would like to keep talking about, significant things that we could send each other an email or send each other a resource. And so it was for me, it was a marvelous time of networking, connecting, building bridges, and learning from each other. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. And now we go to, I believe, Asma, who led the church breakout group.
Thank you. We had an interesting group from all over the world. I liked meeting them. We did introduce ourselves, but we also spent some time looking at what caught our attention and how we would apply what we heard this afternoon. So just to feedback, I think one of the key things that I heard was that every believer can be a discipler. We are called because the Holy Spirit dwells within us, and people need not be afraid in stepping out to give themselves to do that. So I really like that. There was another issue around training to disciple unbelievers, and they liked what Bob Moffat shared with us this afternoon, and also what Dave shared with us. There was a recheck. People were checking themselves to say, what do we need to do as a church to be more intentional about disciple making? How do we rethink what a disciple is? How do we do it? And I think that Dave's little sharing with us this afternoon was helpful in people seeing how best we can move forward. And then one of the key areas we also raised was really loving people, just unconditionally loving people. And evangelism is not just saying, but it's actually being and doing. And then listening from Brazil, they were sharing that a lot of this they've not heard before. So this is a new introduction to discipling, and it's something they would take back to their church. Thank you to all those who are part of my group. I hope I represented you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asma. And now we go from South Africa to Central America. Gerald, please share how did the meeting on youth went.
Yes, thank you so much. We had a great group. We needed more time, but really it was awesome to talk about the youth. Charles also mentioned a little bit. I'm gonna just give a little nugget of what we talked about. Charles mentioned about focusing on building the kingdom and building relationships. I think it's so important with respect to the youth. Kajal also mentioned about sometimes the disciple making is not made by the church or the pastors, but by institutions. And I've seen that also many times. Youth institutions are the ones that are discipling the youth instead of the pastors or the church. So that it poses a problem in which sometimes the youth will go to an institution instead of the church. He mentioned his experience in Bangladesh. Also, we mentioned about transformative versus normative disciple making. Sometimes we have to make it more transformational and not just going through a booklet. We have to be intentional. We have to understand that there are different influences in the world with respect to social media, with YouTube, TikTok, and all that. They are really discipling our youth. So we need to be more intentional on how we can influence our youth, and also understand that they have a very short attention span. So we have to make it exciting for them, but also continuous in the sense that we don't have to have a small discipleship and then leave that program aside and never do it again. We don't have to neglect it. So I think it's important. Also, Pauline mentioned about materials. We do need materials. We do need to move in small groups so that we can have an effective disciple making for the youth. That's it.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you very much. And now we go from Central America to Malaysia. Pastor Matthew, please share.
5 of us, we from 4 continents, so we cover big area of the world. Very interesting. We're just writing on this the theme of tonight that we should have done a lot more, as important as disciple making is to the church body globally. We have not done enough in that area, but more so the area of discipleship of the home. And we just dwell on the question why. How come? We all know that that is very important, especially right now. We have experienced several months of lockdown, and we discovered that both the church leadership as well as individual Christians finding that it's so important to keep the family healthy, and yet we have not paid a huge lot of attention to that area of the church life. So we spent quite a fair bit of time, and we just warming up, and time came, to part. I think we need to spend a lot more time in that area, and I hope that we can cover that a bit more on 22nd of July, that webinar. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew. And this would be a good time to announce that our next webinar will be on July 21st, actually, not 22nd, July 21st, and it will be completely dedicated to looking at disciple making at home. We have an intriguing title called Bringing Disciple Making to the Table, meaning to your home tables. So I cannot encourage you more to join this webinar. I think you already seen in previous previous conversations how central and how important it is to focus on disciple making at home. So please join the webinar in 2 weeks, and also encourage your friends and other leaders to explore it, especially those who are interested in the topic of family. And I would say if a leader is not interested in that topic, he or she should start being interested in that. So please join. It's again July 21st at the same time. Of course, there will be announcement and new links. And also, before we close, we wanted to let you know that there is a way now that you can get quick updates and reminders directly to your phone. I know that most leaders probably do not need another notification coming to their phone, so you may want to just look through your list and delete some others. But if you would like to receive these ones, please follow the link. And there is the link right here in chat, but also there was one in the email. And if you click on this link, it will take basically it will bring this to your phone. So you'll join a part of the WhatsApp group that will have regular announcements, either webinars, reminders, some quick. We'll try not to We'll try not to interrupt too much, so don't expect many daily announcements. But we recognize that many of us use phone as our primary way of communication. So just wanted to make it easier for those of us who would like to use that opportunity. Again, go on that link and then you can join the WhatsApp group. It's a closed group. Again, we are not sharing contexts. So this is just for those of you who subscribed and would like to receive these notifications. I believe this is all for today. So again, thank you all so much for joining today's webinar from wherever you are. Thank you all facilitators, Dave and Matthew and Asma and Gerald for leading us through this conversation. And we also just want to thank Val again so much for working very hard, often behind the scenes, to make these webinars possible. Again, have a great rest of the day or good night, and we look forward to staying in touch and seeing you again.
Ruslan, one quick word for
Yes,
those
sure.
who are in groups 3 and 4. When we meet 2 weeks from now to focus on the family, we will be talking about our families as pastors, because that is one of the most difficult things for pastors to do well. And we'll be talking about our families as organizational leaders. So the whole topic of family is incredibly relevant to those other groups. I don't think we'll all be flooding into the family room. I think we'll be taking family and bringing it into our rooms, just as a clarification.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Dave. So we will be looking at this from all of the different angles, including the ones that we've been doing it so far. So thank you very much, Dave. And I hope that if someone was doubting if they should join after what Dave just shared, I think all doubts should dissipate. So again, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless.
Blessings. Thank you.
Many blessings.
Thank you.